I was 72 years old the Christmas I was told to sleep in a garage. Daniel, my oldest, called 2 weeks before the holiday. His voice was unusually warm, the kind of sweetness that only came when he needed something, or when Amber, his wife, wasn't around to roll her eyes. "We'd love to have you here for Christmas, Mom. The kids miss you." It had been 3 years since he last invited me, and even longer since the invitation came without guilt attached. Still, I said yes. I bought gifts for the grandchildren, carefully chosen, wrapped in gold foil with satin ribbons. I even brought a tin of sugar cookies, the same recipe Daniel used to devour as a boy. I dressed neatly, loaded up the car, and made the 7-hour drive from my small apartment near the coast. I tried not to get too hopeful, but something in me, some quiet part of my heart, hoped maybe this time would be different. When I arrived, Amber opened the door with a stiff smile. Her makeup was flawless, her sweater tight and festive. Daniel followed behind her, avoiding eye contact. "Hi, Mom," he said, taking the cookies and balancing the tin on top of a pile of Amazon boxes. "The guest room's under renovation. I meant to call. There's a bit of paint drying." "Oh," I replied. I could already see past him into the hallway. The guest room door stood wide open. No drop cloths, no paint cans. A perfectly made bed sat untouched. Amber chimed in, not bothering to lower her voice. "We set up a space for you in the garage. It's clean and it's warm enough. Daniel even put in a little space heater. You'll be fine." She led me through the laundry room and opened the door to the garage. It smelled faintly of gasoline and old cardboard. A camping mat lay on the concrete floor. A threadbare blanket was folded on top. The space heater sat in the corner, humming as if it, too, was ashamed. "She should be grateful we're letting her stay at all," Amber whispered, just loud enough for me to hear. I said nothing. My fingers curled tightly around the handle of my suitcase as I nodded politely. My voice had always grown quieter around Daniel, as if shrinking myself might soften his edges. But inside, something shifted. That night, I lay on the cold concrete, using my coat as a pillow, the blanket doing little to fight the December chill. I could hear laughter from inside the house, glasses clinking, children squealing as they tore open gifts I had brought. They hadn't even waited for me. I didn't cry. Not one tear. What Daniel didn't know, what Amber would never imagine, was that I was not some poor, helpless widow scraping by on Social Security. I'd let them believe that, of course. Let them think I was too fragile, too dependent to live on my own. But after James passed, I invested every penny he left me. Quietly, smartly. I built a modest but powerful real estate portfolio. I lived simply not because I had to, but because it kept the peace. I let Daniel think I needed him because I feared losing what little connection I had left. But not anymore. That garage was the last straw, the last indignity. As I lay there shivering, I made a decision, not out of spite, but out of something colder and older than anger. Resolve. I didn't come for revenge, I whispered to the shadows, but I didn't come to stay invisible either. And that was the beginning. If this story speaks to something in you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Real Her Stories, because your voice matters too. By the time the sun rose on Christmas morning, the decision had already crystallized in my bones. While the rest of the house slept in warmth and comfort, I slipped into the hallway bathroom, quiet as breath, and dialed Martin, my attorney of over 3 decades. He answered on the first ring, groggy but alert. "Eleanor, wait, sorry, Margaret, are you all right?" "I'm fine," I said. My voice, to my surprise, was steady. "But I need your help. I want to buy a house." "A house?" he repeated. "You just sold yours 3 years ago." "Yes. But this one's not on the market." There was a pause. "Whose house?" "Daniel's," I said. "Well, technically the one he's been renting. I want to purchase it quietly from his landlord. I believe the owner's name is Phil something." "Phil Carmichael?" Martin asked, the tone of his voice changing. "He and I play golf twice a year. Then it'll be a quick conversation." And it was. Within 48 hours, Phil agreed to sell, 20% over market, cash deal, no questions asked. He didn't even blink, said the property had been more trouble than it was worth. "I'll draw up the paperwork," Martin said. "We'll keep it under wraps. Give me 6 weeks." Not a word to Daniel, not even a syllable. After that call, I returned to the garage and folded the thin blanket like it mattered. I walked into the house once everyone had left for a walk and caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. My shoulders were hunched as they always were around my son, a posture I'd learned over time to minimize his irritation. But I stood taller for a moment just to see what it looked like and barely recognized the woman staring back. Over the next several weeks, I began quietly unraveling the version of me they had grown used to. The Margaret who always asked instead of stated, who offered help before being asked and apologized for existing too loudly. The one who lived in a small apartment because she couldn't handle upkeep, not because Daniel insisted she sell the family home. I moved out of that apartment into a modest but elegant condo downtown, paid in full. I bought fresh linens, ate real food again. And for the first time in over a decade, I sat in a professional salon chair and said the words, "Do whatever you think looks best." I wrote a letter to Ethan, my younger son, who had moved overseas years ago. I'd always sensed he left not just for a job, but for distance, from the way Daniel dominated every room and every conversation, from the invisible push that happens when one sibling demands all the air. And then there was Lily, sweet, bright Lily, my granddaughter, the one whose honor roll ceremony I wasn't feeling well enough to attend, according to Amber. I'd sat home in a cardigan and full makeup, watching the clock tick past the ceremony start time, waiting for a photo that never came. So I told her the truth, all of it, that I'd paid for her college tuition since freshman year, that the bank notifications proved it, that the story about Daniel covering her education through hard times was just that, a story. I sent her the statements. I expected confusion, maybe anger, but she responded with a single sentence. I knew something didn't feel right. And with that, the spell broke. Daniel had changed after James died. I see that now. Without his father's quiet authority, Daniel tried to become the man of the family, but it manifested as control. He began telling me what I could handle, what I should sell, how much I could give. He became generous with what wasn't his, my time, my money, my space. And I let him. I let him believe I was dependent because I thought it would keep him close. I hadn't changed. I'd simply stopped pretending. And soon the deed to his house would bear my name. Let's just say the next holiday season was going to look very different. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the final papers came through. The deed was signed, notarized, and officially recorded. I sat in Martin's office with the documents spread before me, embossed in heavy legal type, the Wells name etched into history, but this time, it was mine alone. I didn't cry, I didn't laugh, I just felt steady, like my spine had remembered its purpose. 2 days later, Daniel received the lease termination notice. Martin had it delivered via courier, professionally sealed and legally sound. I knew the moment he opened it, the way you know a thunderstorm's about to break even before the sky changes color. He called, of course. "What the hell is this?" he barked over the phone. "This says our lease won't be renewed in 2 months. From the new property owner. That's impossible. That has to be a mistake." "I don't believe in mistakes," I said evenly. "Would you like to meet for coffee?" He showed up 15 minutes late to the cafe, flushed and breathless, a mess of barely contained panic behind polished manners. He didn't even sit before waving the notice in my face. "You bought our house?" I took a slow sip of my latte. "No, Daniel, I bought my house. You and Amber were just renting it." "You lied to me," he accused, mouth agape. "And you lied to me," I said calmly, setting my mug down. "About needing help. About why the guest room was under renovation. About nearly every financial emergency you used to guilt me out of thousands." He pulled the chair back roughly and sat, shoulders stiff. "You've been hiding money?" I reached into my bag and laid a small leather notebook on the table. "No, I've been documenting. 15 years worth of loans, dates, promises, and silence. That silence ends now," Amber called later that evening, her voice as brittle as cheap glass. "You can't just throw us out like this," she hissed. "This is a family matter." I agree, which is why I've handled it with more grace than I was ever afforded. You have 60 days. We'll fight this. You're welcome to, I replied. Just know that I've had recent cognitive evaluations from 3 specialists and passed every one. My estate planning is airtight, and your names don't appear on a single document I didn't authorize. Amber went quiet. I could hear her breathing through her teeth. I've also updated my will, I added. It now includes what my attorney calls a behavioral adjustment clause. For each instance of manipulation or mistreatment, past or present, Daniel's inheritance reduces. The documentation is extensive. Click. I hung up the phone and returned to the architectural sketches on my table. The house, my house, was about to undergo its own transformation. The foundation was already registered, the Wells Foundation for Elder Independence. Its mission? To support seniors like myself who had been emotionally or financially controlled by family. The ground floor would become office space, the upstairs, temporary housing for women rebuilding their lives. The announcement stirred quiet waves in the community. Old friends reached out, a few donors came forward. Martin introduced me to a designer named Claudia, a sharp, kind woman whose own grandmother had once been trapped in a similar situation. Daniel, meanwhile, was unraveling. His consulting business began to fold. He'd used one of my old loans as collateral, funds he no longer had access to. Amber moved in with her sister in Arizona. The house he once used to impress clients was under renovation for a cause he didn't believe in. And Lily? My Lily was barely speaking to him. She'd learned too much. One morning, about 6 weeks after the lease notice, I was standing in the foundation foyer when I heard the door creak open. I turned. It was Daniel. He looked smaller somehow, deflated. His once pristine blazer was wrinkled. His eyes, usually sharp with calculation, were dull, shadowed. "I need help," he said. I gestured toward the seating area. "Then sit," he blinked. "That's it?" "No." I sat across from him, hands folded in my lap. "I'm offering you a position. Entry level, you'll answer phones, make coffee, and file paperwork." His eyebrows shot up. "You want me to be your assistant?" "I want you to start over, like any adult would have to." "And the inheritance?" "Still yours for now. But it's earned back, not assumed. That clause remains in place." He let out a bitter laugh. "You'd rather make me work in your charity than write me a check?" "This isn't a charity, Daniel. It's a second chance, but it comes with boundaries. Therapy twice a week, no access to funds, and no expectation of forgiveness." He stood abruptly. "You want to humiliate me?" "No," I said, remaining seated. "I want you to stop humiliating yourself." He left that day. No promises, no closure. But 2 mornings later, he showed up at 8:00 a.m., dressed in a clean shirt and holding a notebook. "I guess I'll need a desk," he muttered. I handed him a clipboard. For once, I thought to myself, I didn't offer rescue. I offered responsibility. And maybe, just maybe, that was what love finally looked like. 1 year later, the woman I see in the mirror finally feels like someone I recognize. My silver hair is no longer frayed and hidden beneath a tired scarf. It's cut in a smart, elegant bob. My shoulders, once hunched by habit, now rest upright, not out of defiance, but because I've remembered how it feels to take up space without apology. The Wells Foundation for Elder Independence is thriving. We've housed 17 seniors in transition, hosted community workshops, and built partnerships with local organizations. Every wall in the old house now tells a story of dignity reclaimed, of silence broken, of lives beginning again at 60, 70, even 85. Ethan now calls weekly. He's been home 3 times this year, and each visit feels like a reunion with someone I lost to distance, not just geography, but emotional survival. He says he's proud of me. That still stuns me sometimes. And Lily, well, she visits whenever she can between semesters. She calls me badass grandma, though she knows I don't quite know what to do with the word. Her eyes light up when she talks about the foundation, about how she wants to intern here one summer. "I want to help other women like you," she said once. "Women who don't let anyone tell them when their story is over." As for Daniel, he's stayed sober for 11 months. He still works at the foundation, filing, scheduling, running errands, handling volunteer logistics. He doesn't hold power here, but he holds space. Sometimes, during our weekly staff meetings, I see a version of the boy he once was, curious, sensitive, desperate to be enough. It's fleeting, but it's there. I haven't removed the behavioral clause from my will, but I've adjusted it. It now includes a pathway to restoration, not just punishment. Consequences, yes, but also possibility. One doesn't cancel out the other. Last week he took me out for lunch, his idea, his dime. Halfway through the meal, he handed me a small package. "I found this in an old box," he said quietly. "Thought maybe it belonged with you." Inside was a photograph of James and me on our 30th anniversary. He'd taken me to a lakeside cabin, and someone had snapped a picture of us on the dock, his arm around me, my smile still bright, my posture still strong. "I see you now, Mom," Daniel said, his voice low but honest. the real you. I'm sorry it took losing everything to notice. I held his gaze for a moment, then smiled. We both see clearly now, I replied. That's a start. And maybe that's all redemption ever really is. Not a finish line, not a perfect healing, but a beginning again, on firmer ground. So if you're listening, if you've ever been made to feel invisible, to question your worth, to believe your best years are behind you, hear me when I say, it's never too late to reclaim your voice, your worth, your life. Thank you for listening to Real Her Stories. If Margaret's journey reminded you of your own strength, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Your story matters too.